Welcome back, Estelden here. Not long ago, THQ Nordic announced that the GOTHIC Remake is in full production. Feedback from their teaser was overwhelmingly positive apparently, and the fans are no doubt hungry for more. So who was giving this feedback? Because the teaser, well, it's certainly not Gothic. It's like a generic action RPG with a few choices here and there, and not a single thing about it actually brought me back to the brilliance that was the original Gothic 1. When I'd seen the teaser, I'd assumed it was just a graphical and combat upgrade to the original. I thought, yeah look, I could probably live without this, but it's not the end of the world. If it brings more exposure to a series that's popular in Europe, but deemed to not exist in the West, where everyone chose Elder Scrolls instead, well then why not? That is not the case though. This isn't just a remake, it's a game that uses Gothic characters to make sure there's interest. But then we're presented with a game that doesn't utilise any of Gothic's strengths at all. The exploration, at least in the teaser, was bare bones. The combat is a little odd and not really an expansion of what the original Gothic actually offered, and the world doesn't give off that unique flavour that the original did, which is meant to be a colony and a prison essentially. Now when they said it was a teaser and they were just gathering feedback, I thought, my goodness, thank God. That's all this is, and we can give our thoughts, we can give our prayers, we can ensure this can be rectified and become the game of our dreams. I'm not so sure about that either, because when I played it, this did not seem like some sort of test or a prototype. It felt a lot more like a game that was in development and we were now getting the demo. I mean, THQ Nordic are not known for their high budgets, at least so far with games like Darksiders 3, and that's fine. I'd prefer that they think realistically, so not every single game needs to sell a zillion copies to be profitable, as the likes of Capcom and Activision seem to need. I say this because I find it hard to believe that THQ Nordic would green light something like this, which would be months of work. It includes controller support, there's UI, there's voice acting, there's a lot here that's been worked on. Are they really going to pretend that it was just to gather feedback and if anyone was interested? From what I can see, to go back and change a whole bunch of these things that are in there already to please the fans, it's probably not feasible based on their budgets and how they've gone about all of this so far. So what were they doing? Well, a demo letting people try the game to build up some hype. Give the impression there's big interest, big numbers of interactivity from all these different people giving their thoughts and opinions. It's amazing how things go right for these devs. They release a prototype, and lo and behold, there's a bunch of positive feedback, and then the devs can come out with, well, there is just so much interest, so much positivity, we're going to green light this and make the whole game. Is that not a little too convenient? Did this not play exactly into their hands? I mean, this sounds like marketing speak to me. My other red flag is on the Steam page. It says that they need our help to turn Gothic into a modern game. Terms like that worry me because it seems that they've not just pinpointed graphics and maybe controls as being a problem, but also a ton of aspects that actually make Gothic a great, unique, one-of-a-kind game. Gothic is different. Unlike most RPGs, my most memorable experiences with it aren't actually with the typical positives like your quests, your factions, or honestly, even the characters themselves, which are good, there were just other things that I loved more. Gothic to me is the greatest open world RPG that exists. This applies to its sequel as well, but I do want to focus on the original because that's the remake we're getting. In Gothic, they completely nail the balance between finding interesting items, but also never finding too much so that your inventory feels too bloated and looting items starts to feel meaningless. Finding a health potion or some coins can feel great, and they hand-placed around the world in such a way that it feels like a living, breathing world. You find little stockpiles left over from dead adventurers, one-of-a-kind weapons left over from journeymen who were killed by deadly creatures, and it's that realism, that sense that you're actually exploring somewhere real that keeps it engaging. When I talk about looting things, it might suddenly sound like Elder Scrolls or Fallout, but there are a few key differences here. For one, looting and hoarding items is not the point of the exploration. The exploration helps you in your quest because you start the game off with nothing. You're an idiot, you're a weakling who the NPCs very quickly look to try and rip off and take advantage of. So finding these items is crucial to helping you, and you'll be using them. You won't be hoarding them and taking them back to your base or house like you would in Skyrim. In Gothic, there's no joining the Mages Guild and bossing them around 2 weeks later when they crown you their leader. In Gothic, you really need to work your way up from being a complete nobody to being tolerable. No game out there in the RPG space rewards exploration more than this game. Mobs and enemies don't just respawn at random, meaning XP in the game is fixed, making it feel like you're always making progress. You know in a game sometimes where you think you might have missed something in an area that you might have visited, you've got to go back, you've got to re-kill all the same enemies, look for your loot, you're retreading old ground, not really being sure if you're at that part before already. In Gothic, that doesn't happen. You clear off sections of the map bit by bit, exploring, feeling like your character is gaining genuine progress, and because enemies don't scale to your level either, it brings with it a lot of satisfaction. Remember that pack of wolves that were too hard for you a few levels ago? Now you're a bit stronger. You found that new weapon. Now you can actually go and beat them. Now you've opened up a little bit more of the area to explore. Remember doing that in Skyrim? Well, no, because everything scales. The dungeon rewards, they're all generic, they're all scalable rewards, and once you've done one dungeon, you've experienced the whole gameplay loop. Nothing interesting can happen outside a few quests. This is where my fears about the remake come into play. The team behind this game are not the same people who made the original Gothics. Now that dev, Piranha Bytes, has actually gone on to make similar style games, most recently Elix. I'd encourage everyone to check it out and play it as if you're actually playing one of the old Gothics. Don't play it like you're playing some modern RPG. It is a real old school title. My worry is this new team will see some of the feedback to games like Elix and think a lot of the elements such as no respawning enemies, the difficulty at the beginning as you slowly gain power, and the very distinct exploration as all being dated, early 2000s mechanics that need to be removed. If that's the route they're going to go down, this will not be Gothic. It will just be another ARPG mixed in with games like Greedfall that reviewers complain about as being clunky and only being worthy of buying on a sale. This series is unique. It is not a generic ARPG. It is a one-of-a-kind series that's legacy needs to be preserved by staying true to the spirit of the originals. My feedback is, if you want to bring Gothic to new players, then sure, revamp the graphics, revamp the controls if you want so you can bring it to consoles or whatever you want to do with it. But please, do not change the game. Everything is hand-placed perfectly already, and I'd rather not have someone meddle with that and get it all wrong. The reality of them getting it wrong is anyone who is even remotely curious about Gothic will assume this is the definitive version, and if it's missing what made Gothic special, that original spirit will continue to slip from people's minds, even though it should still be influencing games in 2020 in an ideal world. Now for the combat. The original Gothic games are often criticised for having clunky combat, but it's just not the case. It's actually designed to feel clunky at the start by design. Your character looks stupid with a sword. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's basically a bumbling fool. The trouble is, most people who played the game likely dropped it within a few hours, and that's what they took away from it. They didn't see what comes next, which is as you train up your skills and you gain levels, the animations get more fluid and the combat itself becomes very smooth as you learn. This is what separates it from other action role-playing games, as it actually makes it feel like you're playing a traditional RPG, not just a game with some RPG elements. In this remake, the combat looks like it's ripped out of games like For Honor. It's designed with controllers in mind, the modern gamers in mind, and it doesn't take any influence from the original. This is a great example of them ignoring elements of the original Gothic, simply removing them because they're apparently outdated instead of expanding on them or even correcting some flaws. According to them, the actual system is a flaw. Is that not odd, seeing as you're remaking the game because it's apparently a classic? If you don't think that it is, and your design direction suggests that you don't, why don't you just make your own game? There's a ton of other issues, such as skills being removed, jumping and climbing now including button prompts, which completely takes away from the open feel of the game. It's very clear that this is just a generic RPG some small team is putting together with a Gothic name, because it's convenient for THQ Nordic. I also think the publisher needs to start acting in better faith. They've got some very skewed metrics about positive feedback. They claim that everyone seems to be loving it, that basically doing more of the same with a few tweaks is going to make for a classic Gothic remake. But if you go to the Steam page, there seems to be a pattern. A lot of people, both on the negative side, so the thumbs down and then the thumbs up, they all actually have issues with the game. It seems a lot of people who gave it a thumbs up did so because they were happy to get free access to a demo, not because the game itself is of the standards of an actual Gothic title. It's important we get something from this though. The fact of the matter is, a Gothic game is going to be released in the near future, and it is the perfect time to get the originals back in front of people. Gothic 1 and 2 are classics, and it is a damn shame that games like Fallout, The Witcher, and many more aren't taking more influence from it. There's a really special element of Gothic that I've seen no signs of in the remake demo, and that is how you actually have to think and act like you're in a real life situation sometimes. You can't rely on in-game prompts to guide you, you need to use your brain. There's a group of hunters near the start who tell you that you need to stay out of the woods, and they direct you towards other areas. Now you can most certainly go to the woods, and it was interesting because I've seen posts online criticising the game because they kept dying when they tried to explore. They wanted to be like Breath of the Wild, where you could go anywhere and do anything from the start. Now that might have worked for that game, Although my unpopular opinion of the game is it's really not that good. It got a lot of hype, a lot of this and that, but no, I'll be quiet about that now. But that sort of design philosophy does not work for Gothic, and people who get angry about that just don't understand what it's trying to achieve. What you're meant to do is actually take that hunter's advice. He knows the area. He knows there are dangerous enemies in the woods, and the smart thing to do is to start with smaller critters and slowly work your way up to the tougher foes later on. There's an opportunity to hammer home the feedback that what we're being presented with is not Gothic, and that the only thing that'll be acceptable is a genuine remaster that maybe sees graphical updates, just the simple things that get the game into new players' hands, or starting again from the ground up. I fear the latter is too late though, because from what I've seen, I don't think they've just developed this teaser. I have a feeling this game is in full production and was already, possibly with a release late this year, and that demo was just for building up hype. I really don't think that they've released this and in 3 years we might see the full game. It's just not how THQ Nordic operate. The question will also be whether or not Elix 2 will come out before this game. Piranha Bytes have never gone 4 years without releasing a game, so it stands to believe that Elix 2 will release this year, especially when it's likely to use a lot of the same assets and the same ideas. Now this might be a bit of a self-inflicted curveball for THQ Nordic, because Elix 2 will likely stay true to the Gothic philosophy, and I'm hopeful it'll be a good game. Meanwhile, this Gothic remake will come out and be completely devoid of any of the original's DNA. That means there's a chance for us to give some real feedback. If Elix 2 is great, if it captures what makes Gothic great, then it's something we'll want to celebrate and make sure that THQ Nordic are aware of the following these games have, and why trying to appeal to a new audience is just going to alienate everyone. The spirit of Gothic lies in a combination of different elements that were executed near perfectly. Combat is interesting, and enemies provide real challenge and the best exploration and open world design I've seen from any game. Now, if they take the feedback in good faith, and actually get to work on a genuine spiritual successor, then I'll be completely open to it, and I'll happily support the game. But if they phone it in with the typical modern nonsense that hopes to win a new crowd of Elder Scrolls fans on console, then they can kiss goodbye any chance of reinvigorating the series, and it'll be up to Piranha Bytes as usual to give us our open world fix. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again.